Hi friends, happy March. Today I wanted to talk about all the books I read in February. I read 9 books, so we have quite a bit to talk about today. So without further ado, let's get into it. Got a stack of the books here. I just don't have 2 of them physically. I read mostly romance in March. No, in February, with a sprinkle of classics, lit fic, and YA thriller. The one classic I finished in February was Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This was a half reread, half new read, I guess. I read the first half of Little Women last year, and then I read the completed Little Women this year. And so the first half was a reread, and it was interesting because I feel like I changed my mind a little bit on some of the characters when I reread the book. And then going into the second half, of course, it was a mystery to me as to what was going to happen. But I loved Jo when I read it for the first time. And then with my second round, I didn't love her as much. I was more of a fan of Beth and Margaret than I was Jo this time around. So that was interesting. But if you've never read Little Women or heard about it, I'm sure most of you have. It is a cute kind of YA type story about the March sisters. So it is a group of 4 sisters, and you're going the timeline of them being in their like early teens to however many years this book takes you along. And you get a lot of topics and conversations about, women in their career, love, and finding your person, your match, sisterhood, family, and core values. There's so much goodness in this book. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was so sweet, and I'm so happy I finally got to finishing Little Women. I would recommend it if you have not read it already. Then I read Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, as many people did in February, as it was released in, I believe, end of January. But this book, I was actually quite shocked as to how much I loved it. Ali Hazelwood, I really, really have loved most of her books, if not all of them. I did not like Not in Love. That is the one that stands out the most to me. I did not know how this was going to be because I knew this was going to be a little bit of like a very smutty book. And Not in Love was very, very smutty. And so, anyways, going into this, I had no specific expectations, but I adored this book. This is a book about a diver and a swimmer, and they are in college and both do competitive, I guess, swimming or water exercises and meets. So Scarlett is the main character, and she is battling kind of like PTSD over a injury that she faced, and she is physically healed but not mentally. And then comes in, I guess he has been in the picture, Lucas, who is a Swedish swimmer, and he is the top of the game, best of the best. And they basically come to have some type of agreement because of Lucas's very early on in the book ex. I won't go into further detail because it was a surprise to me, and I feel like that topic and that area of the book should be a surprise to readers. But very, very heavy on smut. I adored their relationship. I was not a fan of Penn at all throughout the entire book. Did not really like the emphasis on Penn and Scarlett's relationship and friendship because I feel like it wasn't a good friendship. But I digress. I really enjoyed this. I would recommend it, especially if you already know you enjoy Ali Hazelwood books. This was a good one. The next book I read was Out of the Woods by Hannah Bonham Young. This is the, I guess, a companion novel to Out on a Limb, and you're following the couple that set up the couple in Out on a Limb, Caleb and Sarah. They are like high school sweethearts basically, and you are meeting them now like 10 years or even longer later, where Sarah is kind of having like identity crisis. She doesn't know if she wants to be married to Caleb, doesn't know what she wants to do with her life because she's kind of leaned on Caleb to support her financially and emotionally as she dealt with her mom, who was sick and dying. And she decides that they need to go on this hike retreat to work on their relationship, or else she thinks they're going to get a divorce. So they go along and take this hike together, and you kind of follow along that. I love Hannah Bonham Young's writing. I think her writing, there's just something about it that is so amazing to me. It enlightens me, it keeps me engaged, and it is so beautifully descriptive yet not flowery. It's just so good, and I definitely enjoyed her writing in this book. But I was not a huge fan of the plot. Like, I enjoyed the hiking scenes. I enjoyed the other couples that were on the retreat. I do think that the ending was, like, the last conflict, I guess you could say, was so out of a left field. I was so confused. But overall, I really did enjoy my time reading this book. But as I reflect back on, like, the books that I read in February, and I read this in the beginning of the month, it is quite forgettable. So, not my favorite, but I didn't hate it. Just a very good, average romance. If you enjoyed Out on a Limb, I would read this book. I read Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. I think this is my favorite book of February. I've got no notes. I loved this book. This is the third book in the Kentucky Rome series by Sarah Adams. You're following along Emily Walker, who is the sister of, yeah, they're all sisters. They're a part of the main family. And she is a teacher, but also wants to be a writer and has like a romance writing, I wouldn't say gig, but side quest alongside her teaching. And the main male character is Jack, who has kind of been her like nemesis throughout school and then also through teaching. He leaves town because he is going to go get married, but then turns out he doesn't get married. He moves back and he buys the house right beside hers, so they're neighbors and enemies. And so you kind of go from there. And I adored this book so much. I loved their love. I love Jack. I love all the characters in this little crazy town. I love the Walker family. Like, there's nothing that I didn't like about this book. I just loved every second of it. And I adore Sarah Adams. So highly recommend this one. The next book I read was actually an arc for Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan, which is the third book in the Skyland series, and I was so ecstatic when I got this arc. Oh my god. I literally downloaded it right away and started reading it, and I was so looking forward to this book. And there was just something, a little spark that felt like it was missing. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this book because it is not out yet, but it is a romance between Hendrix, who is the main female character, and she's a part of like the girlhood friendship group of the Skyland series, and the main male character's name is Mav or Maverick, and he is like a millionaire billionaire. Hendrix is super career driven as well, and they kind of start secretly dating, and I will leave it at that. But I adore this series. I love Kennedy Ryan. I would still definitely recommend this book, but it is my least favorite out of the 3 books that I read from this series. The next book I read was First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. I was so excited to start this book because late last year, I think in December, I read my first B.K. Borison. I read the Love Light Farms, and I'm currently in the middle of that series, and I adore that series so much. It is so captivating and heartwarming, and I love that world. So when I saw she was coming out with a new book, and I believe a new series, I got it right away. And I did really enjoy this, but I don't feel like it left a big impression on me as Love Light Farms has. I think that the family, like Lucy's family in this book, I loved them. I loved all the characters in that family. I loved her daughter. I loved her, I don't even know if they got married, ex-boyfriend, baby daddy, and his husband. Like, I just loved their dynamic. It was so heartwarming to see. And I enjoyed Aiden, but at a certain point, I think I got the ick for Aiden because any scene where they were like lovey-dovey or the smut scenes, I was cringing so bad. And I felt so bad because there was nothing really wrong with him. But I don't know. Something about it was a little too cheesy for me, which is really an interesting take because I don't find many things to be too cheesy. I love love and I love cheesy love. So yeah, I would definitely still recommend reading this book. I really enjoyed it. It is like a take on Sleepless in Seattle. So like they make a radio show. He is a radio show host and her daughter calls in saying that her mom is lonely and needs to find someone. So it is a funny start for sure. The next book I read in February was At Last Count by Claire Ross Dunn. I really did not like this book. I will be unhauling this book and I am so upset. So let's get into it. So first of all, I bought this book at a romance pop-up shop last year that me and my friends went to in Toronto. And the person that sold me this book was saying that the author is Canadian, that the book is set in Toronto, and that, you know, it is a romance, but it has a lot of heavy touches to it. And I was like, okay, that sounds perfect to me. I love reading books set in Toronto because I know the area. Let's do it. So I started reading this book and very, very quickly realized it's not a romance. There is romance in it, kinda, but not a romance. And the heaviness of this book is about Paisley, the main female character. She has like a crippling OCD. And I don't have OCD. I don't know how that feels like, but this felt triggering to me. Like she has like a counting thing. And the amount of like pages where like there's counting in it, it was like giving me anxiety. I don't even know really how else to explain it. So I don't know if someone who has OCD would enjoy the representation or if it would trigger them. Again, I don't have OCD, so I'm not sure. But that was like the heavy topic about it. And then the romance part is a romance with her childhood bully. So I don't know about that. This was so bad. Depressing, did not like the writing style, did not like the writing. I really wish I DNF'd it. Honestly, I should have. And I am actually quite mad that I didn't. This is also not marketed as a romance. So I was sold a lie. I was sold a lie. The last two books I read in February were Good Girl. were Good Girl, Bad Blood and As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson. This is the second and the third in the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. I finally finished the series. So exciting. So overall, like I won't get into the details of these two books because they are part of a kind of continuous series, but you are following along primarily the same people. There are some new characters that are introduced, but for the most part, it is the same characters from book one. It was fun. This series was a lot of fun, but I think my likeness to the series did get lower and lower as I finished each book. The plot twists are so unbelievable and so ridiculous, and as someone who is heavy in the true crime sphere online, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. I know a lot of different cases. I've not investigated, but I've like looked into a lot of cases. I watch a lot of trials online. Like it is a sphere that I am pretty well versed in, and these books are so unbelievable. It's crazy. But again, for the entertainment value, they are very fast paced, very quick to read. They keep you engaged. It is interesting. I did tandemly read the last one. I think actually both of them I did tandemly read and listen to the audiobook, and the audiobooks are great for these books. They have different cast of characters. They have like sound effects because she has a podcast in the series. So overall, a good time, but they are YA thriller books, so I would definitely be hesitant to recommend it to everybody because I feel like only a specific niche of people would enjoy this, and then other people would just find it a little too naive and unbelievable. But I had fun, so no complaints. Those were all the books I read in February. It was a crazy month, but overall, I feel like I did enjoy the books that I was reading. I read a lot more than I expected, so it was not bad. But let me know what you read in February and what you're planning to read in March, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!